Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for another G2I community event. We're glad to have you here. My name is Michelle Bakels, and I will be the host for this event. And today we have joining us Jennifer Riggins, and we are going to be talking about rethinking your 2024 hiring strategy. So, Jennifer is a tech storyteller, a culture journalist, podcast host, event host, and honestly, a lot more things. If you look her up online, you're going to find all kinds of things, and you're going to be like, what doesn't she do? To be honest, probably a shorter list. But we're talking about hiring. We're going into 2024. Companies are reevaluating their budgets and deciding what they want to do coming into the new year with their goals and plans. So we're going to talk about this in a really fun, comprehensive way beyond just the actual action of interviewing somebody and bringing them onto the team. There's a philosophy that Jennifer has that expands into a larger scope from understanding your needs all the way to retaining your engineers. So with that, I'll pause and ask Jennifer, is anything that you want to add to your introduction before we get started?
No, I had already shared in the chat LinkedIn. You can connect with me if you want to talk offline or something, but I do hope people bring questions so we make this as relevant to what you're looking for. And I just think today we talk a lot in tech about the software developer lifecycle. What about the employee developer lifecycle? So that's what we're going to focus on today, hopefully sequentially, but please give us questions and thoughts.
Yes. So in the in Crowdcast, there's the general chat. Feel free to leave all of your comments and thoughts and add into the conversation in the chat. And then there's also underneath a little bubble with a question mark. If you add your questions there, then in the second half of this event, we will go through those questions and show them on the screen and everything. So make sure to put your questions in there. Okay, so let's step through this, starting from the beginning. Where do you believe the process of hiring someone on your team really begins?
Well, your last hires is the process of hiring the next people, because tech may be so big, but everybody knows everybody. And even though it's not great for diversity, equity, inclusion, we know that you're more likely to get hired if you know people. So having a good impression on your current employees and also a good impression on your past employees and does matter, because people are going to ask about it. And then the actual, I guess, the formal process most companies are thinking about is hopefully the job description, but often it's very much a really long list of things you don't need, or maybe need, and nice to haves, but it's not clear what you need or nice to haves. And it's very HR-y. No offense to probably the many HR professionals on this call, but it's not really involving the team, not just the hiring manager, but also the team that's having that gap that they need to fill, which sometimes it may be replacing someone that they know what they need, but a lot of times it's a new role and they don't fully know what they need. So they're looking more for concrete 5 now 10 years, because we're back in an employer's market again, where we're doubling any requirement for experience, whether you need it or not. And it's like tick, 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 tick in these things, instead of looking for what used to be called softer skills, which is ridiculous, but core skills like the ability to learn, the ability to collaborate, the ability to critically think, especially in a time of AI when they're not all the AIs are equal in doing their best work, generative AI, but you wouldn't know because they're very convincing at their work.
Mm-hmm.
And just the capacity to grow within your company. So I think that's a problem a lot of companies are doing, but I guess we can talk more specifically about that job ad.
Yeah, like what do you think a good job ad looks like? How is it broken down? Are there specific sections, lengths to each section?
I think a job ad's going to look like whatever LinkedIn wants it to look like. So
Mhm.
formatting I wouldn't be as concerned about because it would happen. And I know you need keywords for certain job titles and maybe multiple job titles because there's a lot of jobs that have a lot of gray area. They sound very different, like agile coach and scrum master and team lead, but they all have a lot of crossovers. So adding the other types of names of a job that you're hiring for may help people find you better. But there's this statistic that I've never been able to validate, but it's going around the industry for a long time that says a man will apply for a job if he meets 60% of the requirements labeled in the job ad. A woman will only if it's 100%. They meet every requirement. We're not robots. We're probably never going to meet every requirement. So maybe put fewer requirements, put aptitudes you're looking for. I would remove the requirement for a university degree. Especially considering how fast tech is moving. It's not really relevant anymore what they're learning. It would be just as interesting for someone to have a boot camp or to have been contributing to open source since they were 15 or something. Obviously, wait to hire them until they're 18. But but there's a lot of requirements that seem less important. Or, as Kelsey Hightower said, you don't want someone that's just like so obsessed and devoted to a certain language. You want people that are curious and able to learn multiple languages, be like a polyglot in tech. So you want people that maybe have worked with, instead of saying, okay, we use Jenkins, but maybe you could list 6 different things, 6 different CI/CD workflows or whatever you're talking about. Or maybe you work with MongoDB, but you list like 6 other databases because people can learn. Things have certain patterns and similarities, and that opens you up better to find the better candidate for your team, not the better candidate for your technology.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's an interesting point too, because you can have like several providers that offer like some version of like a Postgres database, but if you're only listing like one flavor of that and not keeping yourself open to, this person might not have used Supabase, but they might use something else instead that is Postgres based, then, are they eliminating themselves out of applying for your role when they could easily just learn how to use this new tool that has the same fundamentals underneath the surface? When it comes to thinking about the person that you're hiring, you are mentioning a lot of these like core skills that are not technical, right? But there's also kind of like, there's also this challenge of understanding these things that are a little bit more ambiguous or harder to confirm whether or not the candidate has these skills. So what advice do you have on assessing those things like curiosity and ability to learn when you're really kind of talking to somebody for maybe an hour or two a couple of times?
Okay, so moving into the interview process, I guess more, because that is really hard to assess in a basic round. Companies like Honeycomb, that's why, besides location-based, because they can only hire in certain countries, that's basically the main limit. They will interview pretty much everyone that applies that seems within a vague realm of it, because you never know. So not whiteboards. Whiteboards are creepy. Whiteboards make us feel like we're in trouble at the principal's office. And that's not something you would ever do on yourself. Or spell this at school, fix this problem. Oh, you were talking in class, go in front of the class and fix the problem. No. Whiteboards do have their place for collaboration in a safe, psychologically safe space, but interviewing just never, it should be psychologically safe, but you're at a disadvantage. I think pair programming is a great way to do it, specifically not with the hiring manager, but with one of the team members. It's a good way to You can all watch or listen in together, or you can just trust your team members' opinion. But have people talk out how they would do things. Let people have access to Google Copilot. 92% of developers are already using Copilot. Let them use Stack Overflow. Let them use the tools they would normally use. Your documentation, if you're having them work on live code, hopefully your documentation is good. Get them in a comfortable setting that's not the kid in trouble in front of the classroom, Bart Simpson writing on the board.
Right. That was the first thing I thought of, was Bart Simpson on the
I did that moment, but yeah. I mean, we all love to see what he's writing, but it doesn't, Bart's never learning anything from that exercise.
No,
Clearly.
clearly not. Countless seasons and he's still doing the same thing. That's funny. So I wanted to ask too, like, when making a good hire really comes down to also truly understanding what your need is. So what do you see as the key differences between somebody deciding if they want to hire a freelancer, or try to hire somebody outright on their team? What are some of those deciding factors?
If they're remote first company, which they should be, because return to office has failed, I don't think it matters. It depends. It could matter to the freelancer versus the employee, if they want to be hired full-time or not. There could be people like me that's like an ardent freelancer, and that's great. And both are, let's be honest, the average person stays at a job in tech about 18 months anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what does it matter if they're on your payroll or they're on someone else's payroll? But as long as they're treated completely the same as a team member, there are a lot of roles like technical writer that it's incredibly rare that you'd have a full-time person embedded in your team, but you have someone that you're working with as a freelancer for years and years and years. I honestly don't see a difference. There could be legal or geographic reasons for certain things, but as long as you are onboarding someone in the same way and treating them as a team member, no one really has to know besides HR who's paying their bills.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're paying.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And it's also good to lead into onboarding too, because I think every company I've ever been a part of has had an internal hackathon where somebody is trying to figure out how to improve the onboarding process. It's kind of one of these things that's so funny to me. You work so hard to hire somebody, and then once you catch them, it's like the dog that finally catches the mailman. Like, what do you do with this now that you have it? So onboarding is something that I see a lot of times the ball gets dropped there. What do you recommend in terms of onboarding as it pertains to hiring?
I mean, I think most of the time it is remote first. You may have people come in or not, but that's not that important. Most developers want to work from home and work remotely anyway. So let's just do it. Jump on a call, a video call, to get people to know each other, do something fun before their first stand up, before the first retro. Have, even if it's just half an hour, to have a social something. A management 3.0 practice that I found very useful back when I worked with them was personal maps, which you kind of go on your own and make these thought bubbles around different topics and things. But then you find points of interest that you have in common with people that you wouldn't know otherwise. Whether it's like me, they're like, talk to a lot of strange dogs every day. I like dogs, I don't know. Or they play a musical instrument, things like that. That is a really easy way to create this common ground between people that really does matter. And then mentoring is very good, but also partnerships within the organization, not just on your team, but maybe someone that's starting the same time as you, but on a different team. You matchmake them to talk like half an hour every Friday for 2 months or something and see how it goes. So you can share, and then you know someone on another team, because that, especially if you've not grown up within a company, that's one of the most frustrating things, is understanding who does what how the company works from a political, business, hierarchical standpoint as your company gets bigger. Another thing that's really useful right now that's been a trend is platform engineering. That was a huge trend in 2023. And yes, part of that is helping developers do more with less. But so much of the technical, everything we have to do in this world of DevOps, of moving, of you have to build this, you have to do this, you have to launch to the cloud, you have to maintain, you have to test and all, it creates this huge cognitive load. So by putting things behind an abstraction layer, like an internal developer portal or platform engineering, it helps people get on board quicker. It helps people reach their time to delivering value much quicker and find purpose in their work. That means they're more likely to be retained. They're more likely, you're paying them from day one. You'd like to get value out of them from day one. So it empowers people much sooner to do things like that. So there are a lot of ways that onboarding can be done more conscientiously, but also, and this seems ridiculous, but like a lot of my friends that work, I know I have a lot of friends that do freelance work, especially for maybe the government and larger companies, and it takes them like a month to get the computer. What is that? Like, that's just make sure, and not just make sure they have the computer with everything downloaded and all on it, but if you make sure they have access to the tools and the discoverability and searchability to know who does what with good documentation, you're not only just helping onboard new people, you're helping everyone on the team just be more productive, reach that developer flow state that you dream of.
Yes, it's so true. I know the feeling well of being part of a really big company and joining and being super excited to hit the ground running. And then it's like, you're not even going to get fully set up for 2 whole weeks. It's like, wait, what?
And that would be fine if it's with value, like AWS, Amazon Web Services. You spend your first 3 months learning. You're not actually doing the work. Now, not most companies don't have that type of budget for that type of value added, but they're learning things like from accessibility to diversity, equity, inclusion, but not in the BS way that we all, do that class. We've all taken one of those classes that we actually need to read to take the quiz. Maybe some people had to read and should have more. But they send people to conferences with their colleagues so they get to know people that way. So that's another wonderful way to just get people to know each other. Just because they're freelance or they're permanent hires doesn't mean they want to work remote, doesn't mean they don't want to do things collaborative and creative with their colleagues.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think being a part of the team is really key especially when you have both full-time hires and freelancers. So there was a couple of questions that are already in the Q&A, and please feel free to add more as you like or as you think of things. The first one that we have, many developers, especially entry level, stress about learning so many technologies, and some experienced devs emphasize specialization. How would junior developers navigate being a polyglot, and what about specialization?
That's interesting. It's perfect because I have an article coming out tomorrow. I have a column on the new Stack on TechWorks.
Wait, was this a planted question?
No. That's why it's perfect. But I was just thinking about it because I was revisiting. I mentioned Kelsey Hightower already. He's kind of a big name in the cloud space at Google, and he just retired, but now he's kind of doing his philosopher tour around the world. And he was talking about that, and he basically said, granted, we're in slightly different times over the last year for jobs and stuff, but he said stay at a job for as long as you can learn something from it and then move on. So really, I've had a dear friend who we did lose, but he stuck, I don't love the term full stack developer because the stack is immense now, but he would alternate jobs going front end and back end. And that's how he specifically planned his career. So he could maintain that vision of the full stack, which again, it's not the full stack. There's just too many layers of the stack, but we can at least look at like front, back end or DevOps team, but even that's a lot. So it really is about experimenting with different areas and not necessarily specializing, I would say. So being a polyglot is good, but also just being a problem solver and working for different companies, maybe different industries, or maybe the same industry or vertical, but with different languages and different skill sets. But it's going to change all the time anyway. Like the cloud native landscape is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think this makes sense, like you emphasize being a problem solver. And earlier we were talking about skills like curiosity, and being able to learn well. I think it's going to be impossible for people to know everything, of course, and meet all of these requirements, but generally being generally speaking, in software, there is like kind of a very common problem solving methodology underneath the surface of a lot of our work, and being able to work through that really well and figure things out that you don't know is so important. But yeah, I remember those junior developer days of looking at job applications and being like, should I learn Kubernetes? Like,
No,
right?
you can't learn that on your own. And honestly, with platform engineering, hopefully you won't have to learn Kubernetes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, developers, but only if you want to. You can still be part of the KubeCon community there without knowing Kubernetes. There's enough to learn.
Yeah, so this is a perfect segue into the next question. Can you expand on platform engineering as a trend and how that is changing teams?
Ooh, that's been like my whole year. Culture side. Again, good planted question. I didn't know. So my favorite definition of platform engineering, because it is new, like we know what DevOps is, but what is platform engineering? My favorite definition of platform engineering is from Abby Bangser at Centasso. She says that it's the abstraction layer or platform. Yesterday we did a womanal, actually, a panel with a bunch of women in platform engineering, like really high level, like what women that have been doing this for years and years before it had it. And they were talking it very structurally, and I hadn't heard that before. Like it is a physical structure that you're supporting your platforms on. And I thought that was just a great euphemism. But what the platform does is it takes care of everything that is not differential, but not unimportant. Mm-hmm. So you want your developers focusing on delivering value, the differential work. Everything else that's not unimportant, security, cloud, releasing, testing, all that stuff should eventually be enclosed in a platform. So yes, we've had platforms forever. The idea of platform engineering, though, is that your developer team, because it's about increasing the productivity of the DevOps team or the Scrum or whatever you want to call it, they're your customers now. So it's not they don't have to use your stuff. You have to make it good enough that they want to use it. And it provides them value quicker, and they're able to spend more time in that. Everything's about that flow state when you can just get in the zone and work. Mm-hmm. But right now, I've been in this space, I think like 13 years now as a tech journalist on the culture side. The number one thing, like I started out in the API space, the number one thing developers always said they wanted more of was documentation. The number one thing that developers never want to contribute to or do is documentation. It's like not changed. I'm hoping this is my greatest hope for generative AI, and that it's in with the code, and that's where the benefit of like Copilot or Google's Duet AI is going to be, because it's in where the developers are working, and it can like increase. But for right now, they say that the statistic is 62%. I believe it was in last year's Stack Overflow survey. So check it out, y'all. The 2022, 62% of developers spend half an hour a day looking for stuff. 25% spend over an hour. And that's not, it's just really frustrating. Or also waiting for approval. That like hurts your retention. It creates burnout, because then maybe they'll try to work around, because if engineers don't like what you're doing, they will engineer their way around a problem. So the idea of platform engineering is just to develop to enable developers to be productive, but to build what they actually want in a searchable way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a yellow brick road. They talk about golden pathways, but I like the euphemism of the yellow brick road, that they can go off the yellow brick road and get high on some poppies and take a nap, but you're not going to help them. They're on their own if they do that. But if you stay on the yellow brick road, you have check. You have all these things taken care of. You're building code that you know is more reliable and secure. So phew, that's something else you don't have to worry about. And then you can just focus on the problem at hand. So that's the idea around platform engineering. But one of the main use cases of it is onboarding. I'm hoping I'm quoting my own articles right in my head. But by doing it, one of the big players in this is Spotify. They've released an open source product. They believe in open sourcing things because they're the only way to standardize stuff. So they have Backstage. But by doing, in the first 2 years of using their internal developer portal, they went from 110 days for a developer to reach productivity to 10, I think. Again, you can quote
Wow.
But and what they conclude is your 10th PR pull request is what's considered productive. So they don't need to look for stuff. They can just start doing what they're doing. That may not be something for a very beginner developer. They will still need training and should get mentoring and training. But for anybody else, you just want them, if they know what they're doing, you just want them to start doing it. And that's kind of the idea of platform engineering.
That's a huge difference between 110 days and 10 days. And it kind of reminds me of this thing that I always say about like hiring too, where it's like, you know, you're really not going to figure out like if a developer is working out for your team for like 3 months, probably closer to 6 months, because it takes so long for them to figure out how to deliver value and mesh with the team. And so taking that kind of average of 3 to 6 months all the way down to less than 2 weeks is wild.
And it also, like, you feel, especially for people further from the white male norm, that is the tech industry, you're already going in with, I don't like calling it imposter syndrome. I think it's imposition syndrome, because anyone further from that, the further you get, the harder you've had to work there. So it's being imposed upon you. But you do get frustrated, and you don't make these bonds, these relationships at work, and you don't feel you're getting enough out of a job. So you may leave quicker, but also that has a psychological problem where if you don't feel like you're good at the job, then you start, let's be honest, we start not being as good at a job. So we need to feel successful from day one, or at least the second, your second sprint maybe, where you feel successful, that you can get work done and feel like you have a place, not a family. We know 2023 taught us something, not a family, but a place to work at for now where you can do your best job.
Yeah, that's an amazing insight. I just got another question from Thea. Your Rethinking Hiring article mentions the importance of taking a long-term strategic view in 2024. Can you elaborate on what this entails for engineering teams and how it differs from the potentially short-sighted hiring sprees of the past?
Okay, so 2023 felt harsh. Overall, it wasn't that bad. It's just we got kind of cannibalistic in hiring in 2020, second half of 2020 through towards the end of 2022. We were kind of hiring because we could. We were growing, kind of like how the real estate bubble grew and 2007 happened. I don't really know, but kind of know from that movie. We were just hiring for no reason, or hiring because we could. There was budget. Not me. I don't actually have jobs today. I don't give people jobs. Sorry, y'all. Just advice, maybe. But, and then people just stopped. There were a lot of hiring freezes this year. And I don't think that's the right way either, because there's still companies growing. So you're not going to be able to compete. You're not going to be able to learn all this new technology. So you need to hire, but cautiously. I think another problem that happened, and you could blame it on last hired, first fired. I don't think it is. But teams cut diversity like heck this year. In the tech industry in the US, while women are about 24% or were, I don't know now, of the tech industry, 69% of layoffs were women. And we blame that on, and we know black tech startups are basically not getting funded at all now. There was this push with Me Too, then followed by Black Lives Matter, where companies seemed to care about diversity, but they didn't. It was performative, I think, and they're using kind of last hired, first fired. A lot of companies were cutting DEI. I don't think that is logical, because even from a business standpoint, we know more innovative companies come out of diversity. Diversity of background, diversity of education. Again, what's a 4-year? I have a degree in political science. Like, what are we doing with our degrees, especially from the US, where it's not very specified, but it's wonderfully generic and we're learning a lot of stuff. So I would suggest you hire for aptitudes and personalities, or potential. Also, because the next 2 years is going to be a massive change in technology. You can't hire because someone has 10 years in Python anymore. Maybe you need that if you have a very specific, like, technical problem to solve, but that could also be great to have a freelancer or a project-based hire for that purpose. But in general, we're going through a transition over the next 18 months into Gen AI, and we're not really sure where it's going. But right now, the things we need most are people that can see errors in code, find patterns, testing, quality, I hate quality assurance, quality analyzing. Those are specifically really good job. People that are neurodivergent are specifically tend to be naturally exceptional at these roles. People that can train people. You'll see on that same site where you'll see on my Rethinking article, you'll see a very popular article that I destroyed McKinsey's report about developer productivity.
Yes.
It basically said lines of code are a way to measure, and your best developers, you want them measuring code. You want them writing. No, your best developers, you're what Netflix and some companies call 10X. You want them teaching others. You want people that can enable other people. So these are the things I would say are strategic for your future, are people that can help people learn, not based on a language, because it's just exploding beyond 3 computer screens now, the cloud native landscape. And we just need to be able to change, but we also need to train other people on how to change. We need to enable other people to learn. So right. I think those are the things we need next year, in the next couple of years. And specifically in the prompt engineering space, because prompt engineering is going to be that stopgap. Well, we have like millions and millions of AI engineers we need that we don't have. We're going to need people that are not even necessarily technical, but have a serious domain knowledge as we move into this world of chatbots and generative AI, that they know they're very close to your customer. They're very close to the specific use case, whether it's building management or retail or banking. Please make that better. We have problems. We need people that are going to be writing questions in the way that natural human beings speak. And specifically people from other cultures too, because not everybody speaks like me. But as much as I love my Otter AI, it does not understand accents well. And that's the problem. So we need to be again, it all comes back to diversity is a sustainable strategic business idea.
Yes. Yes. And your last point, I feel like these are just flowing into each other so well. Goes perfectly with this question that came in from Morgan.
Audience.
Yeah, I know. They are just they're seeing the road ahead of what you're saying. What's the stat like for foreign hires, if you know? What does foreign hiring look like right now?
I mean, that's a very broad statement. It depends on the country. It
Mhm.
definitely, a lot of my work is it's either West Coast or it's like EU. I think because of flexible hiring opportunities, whether it's freelance databases or employers of records, etc. I think more and more people are going to be hiring people anywhere in the world. Just hire the best person for the job. Y'all are trying, like some of these white men in tech, these big white men that run certain lettered social media and things, keep trying with this return to office. I just don't think anyone's having it. I just don't. So I just don't see it as an issue. So hiring people around the world is going to be the best. Foreign language will still matter. You want people typically once, I don't think it needs to be just English, but people typically want people that are speaking the same foreign language. And then English is always a value because most code is written in English.
Mhm.
So, but I just think we can hire anywhere from any time. And there are certain economies doing better than that. At least in Europe, I see like UK, Germany, the Netherlands, Scandinavia. These are places that have a lot of jobs, but there are a lot of places that have great quality of work and life in the world. So, yeah, good luck to you though, and connect with people globally. To, I'm not sure where foreign means, but yeah, uh, I definitely think we should hire the best people in the world for the job, but I also think we should pay them for what they pay. And I really love companies and try to only work for companies that pay regardless of location, which usually screws me because I live in London. It's super expensive. So I'm really happy for my freelance colleagues in Kenya and India to be banking, rolling it because they're adding so much value. They should get paid as much as me.
Mm, yeah, I that's an interesting thought too, as well. I wanted to ask one last question before we close the interview about retention specifically. There's a lot of ways to approach retention, and we touched on a few of them, such as successful onboarding, making people feel successful early on in their hiring, and better approval processes and any kind of process in general. What are some other retention strategies?
Get feedback from your developer. This has been the other topic that so much this year is developer productivity comes down to how the developer's feeling. So
Mm,
asking them, and this is where you should start your platform engineering journey anyway. A lot of my year's been that. But asking what is their biggest frustration? What do they think is their biggest bottleneck? And then you can be that glorious company. Like if you're talking to a Google or a Netflix or a Spotify, or I think Atlassian does this too. They have these quarterly developer productivity surveys. But would you feel sad if you left this company? Would you feel sad if you had to leave our tech stack? Those are goals. Those are real goals that you would feel sad, like, because you're so happy with the technology choices. Or a good question to ask developers is, how productive do you feel? This is not like, perception is not great for one-on-one. This is much better for like there are some companies like Netflix that ask nothing anonymous, and that's like their ethos and all.
yeah.
I think the mix of anonymous and non-anonymous surveys are valuable personally, but Netflix is a whole, not all of us are Netflix. And they're doing very good work. But I would suggest an anonymous pulse survey where it's actually anonymous, but like, how productive do you feel is a really cool question to ask to get like an overall vibe.
Mm.
around job satisfaction and purpose, because job satisfaction is so tied to purpose. Also, another thing is, and again, platform engineering should enable this, it doesn't always, but it's two sides of the coin. Business is always very interested in the mystery of what's happening behind the curtain, another Wizard of Oz reference today, because engineering's super pricey. It's one of the most expensive between cloud and salary. It's usually your biggest expense thing, besides if you're still clinging to a giant skyscraper. And they want to know what's happening in engineering. But what they're missing is communicating with the engineers how they are delivering for business. And engineers need a better insight to business. And that comes down to engineering leadership and communicating, because they're the ones that are typically trying to speak. The CTO, the CIO are kind of speaking both sides, or they should. They're not always. But they should be speaking both sides of the technical and business, because they should be communicating to let developers find purpose and that everyone is geared. This is where OKRs, the objectives and key results, either win or lose. Because it's all about having goals that connect value to this united business goal. But usually engineering is kept out of that. And giving people insight into that, that's not something to keep secret. Publish them everywhere. Put your goals everywhere, your objectives. Someone wrote in the audience, engineers need a better insight on the business. I felt that in my soul. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know you've got a lot of kudos for. I love the one that Morgan put up in the chat earlier. Totally agree with that hot take on full stack.
I mean, what a BS word. I mean, I'm a marketer, so I'm making shit up as a service anyway. But like full stack, who wants that burden? Let like someone build that platform, and then you can just have this little stack up here that you're working on building. And that's okay. Let people find purpose in doing what they're good at. And in people, it's fun to do something you're good at. Help people be good at their job. It's not rocket science, though that is also engineering and really hard, I'm sure.
Well, thank you so much. Great conversation, a lot of great advice. And I just wanted to ask before we wrap up, is there any final thought that you would like to leave us with in terms of rethinking your 2024 hiring strategy?
Don't be an ass. I mean, to clarify, a lot of companies are doing that. Give new people a shot. Give people a chance. There's so many. We're back to where we were in, like, I don't know, when was the economic crisis? 2007, which one? 2007, 2008. And you go through and you're just like, oh, it's a tough job market. Let's hire someone with 10 years experience for an entry-level role because we can. Don't be an ass. You need people at all levels of work to build a sustainable industry and a sustainable company. You want those people to mold in the purpose of your business and everything. Just don't take advantage of the market just because you can. Pay people what they deserve and trust that people will be good at their job if you help them actually be good at their job.
Yes, love that. Very straightforward advice. Can't get that confused. Love it. So please find Jennifer Riggins on LinkedIn if you want to connect with her, or if you have any other questions, or find her work on, I believe it's Lead Dev. Yes, that we have tons of articles and insight from you. You also podcast host. You have tons of content and material out there, just like endless knowledge to consume. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being with us. This was a really fun interview, and I think we all learned a lot.
The fun was all mine. And thank you to the audience for being a really supportive and interactive audience. It's the best way to get feedback when we're in this remote world. So thank you. And thank you so much, Michelle, and Thea over there for inviting me on this conversation. Good luck, y'all, in your job hunt, and Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn because maybe I can help you connect with someone that can find your job purpose.
All right. Thanks,
For free. I'm
everyone.
not like, I just want to help people. I want to help people find other good people.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone,